Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Eyes on Geopolitics. I'm here with Mick Mulroy. I'm Dimitri Kontakos. A lot cooking as usual. First on the list is the Ukraine-Russia talks in Istanbul that took place. That just ended about a day ago. With no real. I mean, some movement, but not really much. They've agreed to swap 1,000 POWs, 1,000 for 1,000. First talk since 2022, since the war started between actually Ukraine and Russia together in the room. I mean, Putin was nowhere to be found, which is not really surprising. I'm sorry, I was reading that like Moscow kind of sees it as a win. I guess like doing nothing is a win for them. And like the Ukrainians are not exactly happy with what went down. There was some talks that there was like ultimatums talked about and how Russia demanded that Ukraine remove their troops from Ukrainian territory, which is fucking hilarious. I mean, anyway, you slice it, like if you're not like part of the FSB or GRU, like I don't know how you could spin this at all, right? Like if you're on the payroll, I don't know how you spin this in Russia's favor. Medvedev tweeted recently, like literally probably 30 minutes an hour ago, like threats and stuff like that. Like he's another lunatic. Yeah. One other thing I read too, that the new Pope offered the Vatican as like a possibility for a place to do negotiations and stuff like that. Zelensky did call and they did agree to talk more, but like I feel like that's probably Russia just trying to stall. Mick, what do you got with this?
Well, I think you summed it up there pretty well, D. The summit in Istanbul was called for, by the way, by Putin.
Right.
Right. So President Putin called the summit, then refused to show up and face President Zelensky face to face. Right. Shows you, his level of confidence in his position, and certainly looking across the aisle from somebody who I think is far superior to him as a leader. And then they basically did nothing, right? I mean, this prisoner swap's good, obviously, for the prisoners who getting released. And, the fact that it was, if you want to look at, glass half full kind of thing at all, 1,000 prisoners means a lot more to Ukraine than it does to Russia.
Yeah.
Russia generally doesn't care, doesn't give a damn about their troops. Chances are these guys will get, patched up, fixed up, fueled up, and be back on the battlefield for the Ukrainian side. So I think that's good, but it's also clear that Russia is not interested at all in a real ceasefire negotiation process. As long as they consider themselves winning and they're basically making very minor progress on the battlefield, they're not going to come to the table. And I think that's up to the coalition that supports Ukraine to change. Right. So we need to stop talking about secondary sanctions and releasing Russian frozen assets into Europe and increasing security assistance. And we need to do all those things.
Yeah.
They need to happen. If they don't happen, then, we're getting close to the definition of insanity. We just keep doing the same thing, expecting a different outcome. It's time now to announce these things happening, give a deadline. Russia can see the clock ticking. Secondary sanctions will be, go into place on July 10th or whatever it is, whatever they need. There's a process that has to take place. So, but initiate the process now. And if this is the date, we're going to start releasing $30 billion a week. I'm just making this up.
Yeah.
But these are real consequences there's a 300 billion plus, I think, in Belgium alone to Ukraine. And, you're seeing like Italy just donated several hundred armored personnel carriers. It's still happening, but they need to announce a substantial increase and potentially even start getting ready to start moving forces around at the border, right? Because there's strong talk about
like NATO forces.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't call it NATO because the U.S. would likely oppose it, but countries are allowed to move their own forces inside Europe.
Yeah.
Right. So there is talk about like if Russia starts making significant advances, are the coalition of the willing, so the UK, France, Germany, and Poland, willing to send troops into Kyiv? right? They don't need permission of Russia to send for
Right.
Ukraine to invite other European forces into Kyiv, especially if Russia won't have a ceasefire, right? So,
Right.
and the original plan of the United States had them go in during a ceasefire,
Right.
which Russia opposed. So there needs to be less, talking about what we could do and more doing what we could do,
Yeah.
can do. And I think that's what's coming next. Obviously, the Pope is coming in with a lot of support. He's liked. I mean, he's the Pope, so you expect him to be liked. But he's
Right.
this Pope seems to be particularly liked. Not that Francis wasn't, but he could hold negotiations, and I
Yeah.
think they should call it. And we should send people, and obviously the Ukrainians and European partners, and see if Russia shows up. If they can't come to a ceasefire negotiation hosted by the Pope,
Right.
then you
Right.
got your answer.
Yeah.
You got your answer, right? It's all smoke and mirrors. It's all smoke and mirrors. And next time they demand that, Ukraine withdraw from Ukraine, it should be immediately dismissed. It shouldn't
Yeah.
be considered a legitimate offer or negotiation. It needs to be a 30-day unconditional ceasefire. That's first. And then they start talking about ending the conflict long term.
Yeah.
Until they get there, but they should. I mean, I know it might be some posturing, but if the Pope calls for a summit in the Vatican on this date, that could be the kickoff of all the
Right.
consequences that come after when they don't show up, or they don't show up and don't actually agree to a 30-day unconditional ceasefire. Then security assistance goes up, penalties, sanctions, additional sanctions, secondary sanctions, and the start of the release of the funds. That's what I think is the only thing that's going to get Russia's attention. They only understand consequences. Compliments and capitulation just makes them more bold.
Yeah. I also looked at like who attended the meetings too. Like, so like the Ukrainian defense minister was there, which is like a pretty high up.
Yes.
And like for the Russians, the guy who was leading it was just like one of Putin's like advisors. Right. And like maybe he's got the sway or whatever. Maybe he does have that wasta. But like Lavrov wasn't there. There wasn't anybody there of like, big name, big face that people know and, at least recognize as somebody who's substantial in Russia. I mean, I'm sure like, CIA analysts know exactly about this dude and stuff like that. And I'm sure he does have pull. But to go from like, a week before when Putin's calling for this stuff to when Zelensky's like, I'll be there. Like, I'll be there with
Right.
bells on. Right. Like, I'm ready to talk. And then he just like completely fucking balks at it. It's like, what is the strategic value for Russia in doing that or Putin in doing that? Is it just like throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks for them? Like, I don't understand like the logic.
I think for them, they think it keeps them in the discussion as part of this process for a ceasefire. Right. So we called it, we showed up,
Right.
but it has to actually have substance. Right. So if not, it's just a stalling tactic.
Right.
They're just trying to see how much more they can take on the battlefield. It's really obvious. And I know it's obvious to everybody. So I'm going to point out something. Well, to most people, I'd say I'm not most of our people listening, I think right now are like, yeah, no kidding. That's why I say they pick a date really early, like as soon as possible at the Vatican. When we hit that 30-day ceasefire goes into place, if the Russians don't show up or don't agree to a 30-day ceasefire, then it turns into a planning session. Obviously out of the Vatican, because the Vatican isn't going to be part of the planning session for Ukraine winning necessarily. They need to stay neutral. Then it shifts. They leave the Vatican and they start planning. Prime Minister Maloney is a big supporter of Ukraine, so they can just go down the road to Rome, and boom, they start planning. Okay, how are we going to win this thing then? That's you gotta play to win, right? You can't play to tie. You can't play to capitulate. You got to play to win. And we are so far past the time when that needs to happen.
Hey guys, it's Jack. I want to tell you guys about the sponsor for today's show. It's Mando. Mando makes a whole series of male grooming products. They are unique in that they are a deodorant that you can use all over your body, on armpits if you like, but also wherever else you may deem necessary. And I have been using these products for about 3 months now. I've been using the body wash. It's bourbon leather. I've been using their bar of soap, which I really enjoyed, and also their deodorant. And so I exercise a lot and get very sweaty, so I need a deodorant that's going to do the job. And Mando has come through for me. You know, the body wash was great. I actually used all of that. Need to reorder some more. But the bar of soap was also very cool. It was very smooth, actually. So I hope you guys will go and check them out. They have a starter kit that's up there, and they have a special deal for Team House viewers. So the starter pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice, like mini body wash and deodorant wipes, and free shipping. As a special offer for listeners, new customers get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code. That equates to over 40% off your starter pack. Use code TEAMHOUSE at shopmando.com. That's shopmando.com. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Smell fresher, stay drier, and boost your confidence from head to toe with Mando.
And I think even the Trump administration, which came in as a different perspective than, say, the Biden administration, has realized that this is clearly an issue of Russia, not Ukraine.
Right.
Ukraine is the aggrieved party. Ukraine was invaded. It wasn't because Ukraine was going to join NATO. Ukraine has been asking to join NATO 14 years before the war started, and we said no each time.
Yeah.
Right. And NATO has expanded because of the Russian decision to invade Ukraine. So
also, like, if let's say Russia never invaded, but they still have 150,000 troops on the border of Ukraine, NATO's not going to be like, yeah, we'll accept you with open arms, right? Like, it's not like they're going to take that into consideration of like what's going to trigger an Article 5. And let's say something does trigger an Article 5, Ukraine, this is just a thought experiment now, but then you have to see like, oh, is NATO up to snuff? Are they really willing to enforce Article 5 on, let's say, a new member, right? Like, so I couldn't believe like it would be an easy process for Ukraine to have gotten into NATO. Even if I remember when George Bush was talking about Georgia becoming a NATO member and stuff like that, like that's all kind of rhetoric. Like, it's not really like there's a process, obviously, that goes through it. I mean, even Sweden and Finland, they joined, but it wasn't really like, yeah, you guys are in, no problem. We had shit to deal with Turkey and stuff like that to allow Sweden, was it in or whatever, like
Sweden was
right.
Sweden was focused.
So it's like
PKK and all that stuff, which is now kaput. Right. PKK, that's another topic. But they've basically closed shop. But you're right. But there is a scenario where where Ukraine could get into NATO if they agree to, not cede territory, but stop fighting. And obviously Russia does control part of their territory, about 18%. I mean, I think Ukraine should be the one to decide this. But if they do decide it, they should get instant membership for the rest of Ukraine into NATO. Right, as a compromise.
Yeah.
So it's frozen. It's frozen. Doesn't mean that that's part of Russia. Like the international community should recognize it, but they're not going to do anything to take it back. So Crimea will essentially be Russia. But there is a scenario.
That's the ultimate security guarantee.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. So once again, it shows just how strategically bad this was for Russia. Right. So they end up with a completely demolished section of Ukraine that isn't internationally recognized as Russia, and then Ukraine becomes part of NATO, the most viable part, and the United States moves in large numbers to help, extrapolate the natural resources. So it's a NATO country, and that's good for Russia.
You could do.
I mean, Putin makes just bad decisions, but we need to make it a bad decision on his part and stop basically, screwing around.
You think that he made this decision to go into Ukraine because like his intel and his defense guys were just like feeding him bullshit? Like, oh, we're going to smoke these guys in like a week or two.
That's a good question, because like to be the analysts in this, our intel was saying they were going to take them. Right. So, I mean, okay. So yes, I'm sure that they have a bit of the tell the boss what he wants to hear thing in Russia.
Yeah.
But I do believe, just like we believed, that they would be able to take Russia. I mean, it is the difference in size of military, population, resources, solid alliances, to be honest, because Ukraine had no alliances other than, the United States and the UK and Russia that said that they wouldn't get invaded when they gave up their nuclear arsenal. Right. But it wasn't a real alliance because we've proven we don't keep our word unless it's an actual treaty.
Yeah.
So if you go back to February at 22, we were almost in line with what I think Russia intelligence was telling Putin. You're going to win. It's going to take 3 weeks around that, and Kyiv's going to fall, and the government's going to flee into exile, and there you have it. And they completely underestimated, as did we, the will of the Ukrainian people.
Yeah.
The incompetence of Russian military planners and executors, for that matter. Their logistics system couldn't even keep up with an invasion of a country that was right next to them.
Crazy. Yeah.
I mean, it's the U.S. can invade and supply a force on the other side of the world that's completely landlocked. Afghanistan, for example.
Yeah.
Russia couldn't.
You get Burger Kings and shit.
Yeah.
Like we bring America
lines.
Yeah.
25 miles in from their border.
That is incredible. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone's been talking about how ever since this, like Russia's army is essentially a paper tiger. They're not nothing to sneeze at, but I mean, if you can't take over, it's like us not being able to, it's a bad example given the times, but it's us not being able to invade and take over Canada.
Right. I don't know. You could actually, it might be a similar size difference.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, population wise. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And military size. I mean, you have to look it up. Yeah, I think it really and Russia has had to rely on North Korean troops, potentially Chinese troops, Iranian drones, and now it looks like Iran might provide short range missiles, and North Korean artillery by the millions.
Yeah.
Right. So if they didn't have that manufacturing, that very cheap manufacturing in North Korea, they'd be in bad place.
Yeah,
because they're losing troops like. It's literally unheard of in modern warfare. After World War II, they're losing troops thousands a week. It's just they just generally don't give a damn about their people.
It's kind of incredible, right? That how Russian the population puts up with it, because it's unbelievable how insulated and protected, I guess, that regime is, because if you've lost 150, 200,000 guys, plus another double that or more in casualties, guys who are hurt, I don't understand how a regime like that could stay in power. It's fucking insane to think in this modern day. Because, all right, they have control over the internet and the information, but at the same time, people are getting information too, right? At some point, you're going to notice, shit, we've lost 150,000, 200,000 guys.
Of course. Yeah.
The guys are coming back, brothers, probably maimed,
cousins, uncles. They're not coming back. You don't need that to be posted on Twitter. You're seeing it. So,
right.
And all the people that one of the big issues in Russia is all the people that could could make Russia difference, that are competent, that want to see freedoms and free economies and stuff. They leave,
right?
Because they'll be crushed immediately.
Yeah.
So it's a vicious cycle where the people who would most advance the country leave and come to the United States.
Yeah.
Or Europe. Right. And it leaves only the people that profit of the regime staying in place, the oligarchs.
Yeah, man. It's just incredible. In this day and age, this is going on between 2 years, in Europe, there's a fucking massive land war going on. What do you think happens next in terms of talks and stuff like that? Give me a little bit of speculation.
So I think obviously the coalition of the willing, they call those four main. Actually, it's all of Europe, right? But those are the ones that are most engaged. Macron, uh, everybody that's I already referenced. I think they're ready to do this. They don't need Mick Mulroy from Montana to tell them like it's time to move out. You got to start secondary sanctions. You got to start freezing assets. I think that's the next on the discussion. I think we'll hear that soon. If not, then I would be surprised.
Do you think the reason why this is being held up, do you believe it's got something to do with the Trump administration and like Europe trying to play it like, I don't know, for lack of a better word, like hand holding a little bit to be like, we have to do this. We should do this because like you said earlier, the Trump administration compared to the Biden administration came in with a little bit different thought process. And when it comes to in terms of like Russia and stuff like that and who invaded who and like whose fault this is. Do you think that like that might be a little bit of why there's some drag to this and it's not really happening as fast as we'd like it to happen?
Yeah, I think there was that caused the drag where people were. I mean, we saw some of the stuff that I just was really shocking. Repeating Russian, very discredited talking points, for example. This idea that we were trusting Russia. It's not the first administration who has wrongfully came to the conclusion of trusting Putin. And we can all remember the whole President Bush.
At the ranch thing?
Well, I looked into his eyes and all that stuff. I mean, the guy's a KGB spy. So, right. I mean, he knows how to make you.
I think that was at his ranch in Texas, too.
That's right. Yeah. And then, Secretary Clinton with the giant reset button and all that stuff. I mean, I think there's plenty of things to point out in the past that were very misplaced when it comes to trusting Russia. But I think we're in a spot right now where the administration understands just who needs to be trusted and who needs not to be trusted, and that you can't just convince President Putin to do anything that he doesn't want to without force. You just can't. Or some kind of coercion, right? It doesn't have to be military force, but it could be economic pressure and secondary sanctions and such. That has to be what leads, or we're going to be stuck in this position. It's not going to advance. Yeah, it's not good. They're just going to keep making incremental advances, and eventually the rest of Europe, as Europe, will have to make a stand, and they might do it in Kyiv.
Yeah,
and say, okay, so now you're attacking French, German, Polish, and Great Britain's forces. So now you're fighting all of this. And then we'll have to decide, is that an Article 5 situation? I don't know. But if they start attacking countries in Europe, not just in Ukraine, then it definitely would be.
Well, there's no interpretation for that. I wonder what would happen if like there was a coalition of like UK, France, Poland, and the rest of Europe that sent like a division into Kyiv. What would happen? Like, how would Putin react to that?
Oh, he'd do standard, like we're going to use nuclear weapons, blah, blah, blah.
But he's done that before already.
Yeah, he's done it so many times. I mean, not that we're not concerned about that.
Of course.
I mean, does he want to start a nuclear war with the NATO?
No, he knows he's cooked at that point.
Essentially, it's like having guns to each other's head.
Right.
And no matter who pulls the trigger first, the other one's going to go off.
Yeah. Everyone's going to die. Yeah.
Everybody's going to die. Right. So the reason why we have this nuclear triad is, we have sea, air, and land-based nuclear weapons is because we're going to ensure that our weapons are expended in a case of a nuclear war, even if they strike first. Like, even if they try to take out, they don't know where our subs are. They basically don't know where our aircraft are. And the same can be said about Russia. At least they do a lot to try to. And the sub-based nuclear weapons are the ones that are most secure, just so everybody knows. They simply can't keep track of them.
Yeah, it's a big ocean.
Right. So how do you take it out? You don't. So it just comes at you from a direction you're not expecting.
Yeah.
But I think everybody realizes, and you could Google it, it's not classified. It's just that even a limited nuclear war ends up in catastrophic consequences worldwide. So a strategic level nuclear war
forget it. It's hundreds of millions of people dead.
Yeah, it could be extinction. It
Yeah.
could be an extinction level.
Yeah, nobody wants that. Not even fucking Putin, right? Because he knows he's got his his name is on one of them. Like they're gonna first thing is drop it wherever he hangs his hat, right? Which we definitely know where. It's probably not the Kremlin, but we know exactly where he sleeps every night, probably. And
I hope so.
yeah,
that should be a prime.
I would
election project.
if they don't, I'd be a little bit upset with where my money's going for tax dollars for the CIA and NSA, DIA, whoever.
All the above.
Yeah, like that should be priority number one. It's interesting too. I know this is like a little bit more of a broad talk, but like China obviously aligned with Russia, not totally, but pretty much, I'm sure covertly. They were there at the victory parade in Moscow and stuff like that, which Putin probably loved because he probably was like, okay, they're not going to blow me up because Xi Jinping is next to me. So I think I'm safe, right? They're not. But like China tries to be this like develop, like how we are, right? They put their soft power out there. They spend money in developing places or they help allies. But when things go down, they don't really take a stand on anything. They kind of just like roll with the punches and keep like doing it covertly. They don't really take a stand on anything. If you know what I'm saying, compared to the United States anyway.
China, you mean?
Yeah.
I mean, there is a strategic alliance between Russia and China. They're can't remember the name they use, but it's kind of over the top language for their, forever friends of highest order and all this. But there's always been a bit of a standoff, and we've tried to exploit that. It used to be called the Sino-Soviet split during the Cold War, right? It never really materialized in a way that was what we wanted, and it still hasn't, and it probably won't. And now we're in a trade war with China and the rest of the world. So there's even less of a reason for China to separate from Russia. Right. So maybe we could use some kind of new agreement as a way to leverage that. That's a possibility. But certainly right now, I know it's not their intent. Obviously, the intent is to lower tariffs and get into that, but I'm not an economist. But it is pushing China probably more toward Russia.
For sure.
Because they view probably whether it's trade or kinetic, war is a war, right? So they're looking at, potentially reconfiguring who they sell to, right? Trying to get new alliances to traditional, non-traditional partners of China, like Japan and South Korea,
which is insane. It's like madness to think about that. Like they're kind of like, playing footsie a little bit because of what's going on with the tariffs and stuff like that.
Because there's tariffs on everybody.
And frankly, you can't really blame them, because at the end of the day, they want to make sure that their citizens are, things aren't super expensive and their economies keep growing or don't completely crash. I mean, you kind of get it. Also, I have a prediction in the next 20 years. Everyone remember, like Russia was the biggest, like one of the biggest after the United States exporter of like arms. And that's like crashed because they needed to consolidate for Ukraine. China is going to become number two if they're not number two already. And they're going to start supplying Russia with fighters, you name it, all kinds of like arms and stuff like that. Because the Chinese defense industrial base is like scary. How
they have over 1 billion people, cheap labor, and they steal our technology. So they don't even put in the requisite funds to develop the technology.
Right.
We do. They steal it, and then they come up with a cheap way to manufacture.
Yeah, it's scary. I mean, just their shipbuilding capacity is unreal.
Yes.
Because we're like squirting out like two battleships or whatever, destroyers like a year. They could bang out like, I think the last thing I read was about 7 times that.
Yeah.
It's scary to think. Anyway. All right. Segueing. Hopefully Putin just, croaks. right? Like we just hear a news story tomorrow that he had a stroke and he died.
People like that live forever.
Yeah, they live to like 100, right? All right. Segueing now to Trump's trip to the Middle East. Busy last week for him. Was in Saudi Arabia, was in Qatar, was in UAE, I believe too. There was talk of him going to Israel. He didn't end up going to Israel, so there was some stories about like Israel, United States kind of split, which I don't believe that ever will be the case. But anyway, there was it was kind of and Trump got his new cool $400 million jumbo jet, which is nice, I guess. Mick, what are your thoughts on that?
Oh man, there's a lot to talk about there.
Yeah.
So I mean, there is. I agree. There's the U.S. and Israel will not split. Our alliance partnership, but there's definitely something going on between the administration and Prime Minister Netanyahu, because the U.S. is unilaterally negotiated to get last U.S. hostage out, Adon Alexander, which is great. Israel didn't like it because we've basically partitioned the negotiations. That might be the end because there's no other Americans left alive. There is remains that need to be recovered. They unilaterally, bilaterally, came up with the ceasefire with the Houthis that didn't include attacking Israel.
Yeah.
They apparently, according to reporting, presented a nuclear agreement to Iran that was not coordinated with Israel. And they left Israel off the trip. So, I mean, those are data points that I think suggest that there is a change in a strained relationship between the United States and Israel. I mean, I don't even think Israelis could sugarcoat that.
Right.
And my Israeli friends aren't sugarcoating that. I can tell you. So I don't think it's going to rupture or anything like that, but it is important to point out. And that, like, as the war proceeds in Gaza, there seems to be more pressure by the United States than there has been during this administration to bring it to an end. But it looks like Prime Minister Netanyahu, under this Operation Gideon's
Chariot, yeah,
is going to substantially escalate the conflict. So there's a difference, obviously, there. And there's a difference when it comes to the long-term negotiation to get to another JCPOA 2.0, that it doesn't look like it will meet the standard for the Israelis, because they have a pretty extreme standard on that. So, but that is, I think, Trump administration is still going to move forward. So there's something there, I would say. The other part, of course, I mean, this was primarily an economic-based trip, which,
right,
that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. They've got $600 billion worth of pledged investment by the Saudis in U.S. Technology and energy sector and defense sector. Huge, like 143 billion in weapons sales.
Boeing, I think too.
Boeing, like
90 billion, something astronomical.
200 planes or something.
I think it was like 90 something billion, 96 billion.
Right. And then obviously the aircraft, which, I mean, ethical and legal standards, I think we need to rethink having ethical laws for everybody. It's not focusing on President Trump on what one can and can't accept. But from the security side, I mean, they're going to have to they pull this thing all the way down to the rivets.
They say it might cost $1 billion.
Right. Because the way I don't think you should look at Air Force One as an aircraft. You should look at it as the aerial command post for the commander in chief of the most powerful military and intelligence service in the world. Right. So, we already talked about our scenario where there's a nuclear weapon. They're going to put the president up in an Air Force One to get him to a secluded location. Right. So he has to be, so it has all sorts of things that no other aircraft has. Commercial aircraft, like the Boeing, the 747 8, I think, whatever. Yeah. So it has aerial refueling, like a military aircraft. They can pull up to a tanker, RC-130 and refuel. It has fuel tanks in the plane. It has a surgical suite with all the mixed gas and all that. It has the protective measures that you can
Right.
use.
Yeah.
Some of them are classified. I don't know, but we know the obvious ones like flares and such.
Right.
And it has a unpenetrable communication suite, right?
Yeah.
So you can hide, the mic you gave me to do these podcasts. You can hide all kinds of things in there. Now think
Right.
about how much is in the wiring of a 747.
Yeah.
Like I don't even know.
Forget it.
You
It's like
to a technical
Yeah.
intelligence collection expert, but I don't even think you can determine whether there's something in there.
Yeah.
With all the wires and panels and circuits and such that are in a 747. So, I mean, maybe they could, I don't know, you can even use it for anybody that's in a situation like that would rate aircraft. So
Right.
not a president, but like the Secretary of State.
Yeah, defense, anybody.
Secretary of Defense,
Yeah.
CI director.
Why would they want to ride in that plane? I know it's nice and there's like gold stuff and like a cool bathroom, but like it's like we can't even speak on this without thinking maybe they're fucking listening.
Right. So I don't even know what you use it for. So maybe, I don't know. But it's a security issue. And obviously it's a controversial one for the ethical and legal.
Yeah.
The legal analyst.
All right. So talking about
the other thing, I think the last stop, huge investment in US AI by a company called G42. I think it's an Emirati deal. So, and they're going to be one of the biggest hubs in the world for AI databases.
Okay.
So this, I mean, I don't focus a lot on economics because I don't know it, but it is hugely important. And defense is essentially just part of it, if you really think about it. I mean, ultimately, it's the economics that rules the day for most decisions of a nation state. And defense is basically there to protect the citizens, of course, but also its ability to freely conduct trade and advance its society and all that. It's in support. So I think it was successful, is my point. And I think President Trump brought a lot home for the American people when it comes to investments.
Yeah. On the other side of the Gulf or whatever, the Strait, the Iran nuclear deal. You mentioned it a little bit. Right now, and I was talking to Mark Polymeropoulos on the last episode, who's a bit of a Iran hawk, which I'm sure you are more on that side as well. I mean, we have to assume that we're not going to get the perfect deal where like they completely don't enrich any uranium. And there has to be some kind of plan where it's like, some kind of like arbitrary line where like, we're going to take this up to this and we're going to make a deal. It sounds like they're more open to making a deal in terms of like Wickoff and Trump, the Trump administration as a whole. I know the old school GOP Iran hawks are freaking out.
Yes.
And, Israel's definitely pouring some lighter fluid on that one too for them. But man, I mean, a deal to not have a nuclear weapon and to be the monitoring to be like real stringent and actually do it. I think it's a good thing, man. I don't think we should bomb Iran unless we know they're either very close to to developing a nuclear weapon and making it, weaponizing it, or, just to like, the only time I would be like, hey, let's bomb them is if like we're on the brink, because like we've said, and we've seen that even bombing them with our stuff will bring it back 3 to 6 months. It's not going to completely, derail their entire program. So I don't know what the end game is really what I'm saying, besides making a deal. So,
yeah. And I think ultimately a diplomatic path forward is almost always the best path forward, right? I mean, the people that, talk about military action and going to war and all that stuff are generally people that never took part in military action and went to war, right? Because it's not the answer to everything. Can't just say pull the trigger and then they just don't have a nuclear weapon.
Right. Yeah.
It's just not, it's not the way it goes. And there's all sorts of potential consequences, like a large scale regional war, like the blocking of the Straits of Hormuz with sea mines, which Iran can definitely do, the attacking of our bases in the region by Iran. I'm not against the military option as kind of the last option,
Right.
but we really ought to exhaust all diplomatic efforts before we do that, because it's not an answer to all. It could be an answer and part of the issue or solution, so to speak, but it's not what I think some people think, which is just like, we'll just pull the trigger, they'll go away, and they won't have a bomb for now and eternity. So the big issues with the negotiations: one, can Iran enrich uranium at all? Their stance, they want to be able to enrich up to the rate needed for nuclear power, civilian nuclear non-weapon power. The United States has already said that we do not. Secretary Rubio, and I think that was magnified by a resolution of the House and Senate, that we don't want them to be able to enrich any uranium, because in the event they have all this capacity and then they decide to race toward it, they would be able to do it. If they don't have the capacity, then they have to rely on an outside source, which I think other countries, for example, like UAE, I think Saudi has already agreed to. Like, they could get enriched uranium for a country that's already doing it.
Right.
Right. And so could Iran. And obviously they have an alliance with Russia. So they could get up to that level, so they can use it for civilian energy, not military, civilian energy resources. That's one of the sticking points. The second sticking point that's always been an issue for the United States is ballistic missile programs and support to proxy forces by Iran, particularly the IRGC Quds Force. So they support Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, for example. It seems like the especially on the proxy forces, Iran's hard line, they're going to keep their alliances. So we're going to have to decide whether that's a game changer. It was one of the reasons why we pulled out of the JCPOA in 2018. So that's going to be controversial if we do not include it, but I don't think it will be included from the Iranians' perspective. And maybe we just make sure that we just keep supporting our partner, like Israel, and crushing them.
Yeah.
Right. Israel has crushed Hezbollah, has seriously crushed Hamas. And, yes, there's still Houthis, but there's always going to be Houthis around the mountains trying to shoot at us in Israel. The issue of ballistic missiles, it really comes down to a ballistic missile that can carry a nuclear warhead. So maybe we should focus on that.
Right.
The sunset provisions. In the past, one of the criticisms of the 2015 JCPOA is that it sunsetted, like it just ended, and then Iran could go back to doing what it wanted. So the U.S. is going to want this to be permanent. No nuclear weapons.
Permanent with no nuclear.
Right. I think that's one area that we could improve on the 2015.
Yeah.
Because, politically they want to improve, or they're going to be asked, why the hell did you get out of it in 2018 then, if you just basically went back to 2015?
I don't think they give a shit. Trump specifically, I don't think cares. I think it might be the same exact agreement, and he's going to tout it as a victory and better than Obama.
Well, he probably will tout it. But there's some places where they could improve.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of places where they could improve, but that's one. Like doesn't sunset, for example. Yeah. It's permanent. And then, there's other provisions. They're going to want the sanctions to come off immediately. Sure. We're going to want to stagger them because we're going to want to prove that they're not. We want proof. So the, IAEA needs to have full access, not just to the sites we know, the Natanz, the Fort Al's, the other places that we know, but they're going to have to go around and look for places that we don't know, because obviously if they have some kind of covert site that's doing this, that defeats the whole purpose of the agreement. So there needs to be proof. And then the sanctions do need to come out. And if you think about it, the further that Iran gets away from being one of the most sanctioned countries on earth, and their economy develops and gets more incorporated and integrated into the world economy, the less they're going to want to turn around and go in the other direction.
Right.
Right. Because we already talked about it. Ultimately, economics rules. And, sometimes not so much for the regimes that don't need it, like a democracy does. But I think even they will see less pressure on their regime.
For sure.
And it'd be great if the regime just went away and the Iranian people overthrew it, but that's up to the Iranian people. But ultimately, there'll be less pressure on the Iranian regime, I think, if the people feel like their economy is going in the right direction and their standard of living is improving. Yeah. So there's a reason for both sides to want to do this, and I think we should be rooting for diplomacy. And yes, consider myself pretty hawkish on Iran. And there'll be people that just won't accept anything, whatever the agreement. But those people generally are part of the solution. They're just magnifier of the problem.
Right. Yeah. Right on. Yeah. I mean, they could kind of like the regime, I don't know, in Iran probably could see what's going on in Syria as like an example of like, you can maybe be accepted into the international community, relatively. Because like we just let the sanctions, we opened kimono the sanctions on Syria that we've had for 40 years during this past, trip.
Yeah.
Which, I get it.
Aspect to talk about that.
I get it. I understand why they're doing that, and maybe a little bit of like development and economic growth will help like make people a little bit more calm and not as like homicidal against us. But I get like it's such a complicated thing. Like I really would love, especially Syria, because Syria over the last 15 years, it is a smorgasbord of different alliances, who's cool with who's not cool with who, but we're cool with them now for a little bit, and we'll see how that goes. Somebody could write an incredible book about what goes on in Syria, because like, yeah, obviously Bashar al-Assad is a big part of it, but it's like so much more. So, and I don't know how I feel about this guy who was in Al-Qaeda.
Yeah, he started.
Is now the president, the indefinite president, until we see a difference. So we see something happen, being accepted into the. I don't know how I feel about MBS and him giving each other pounds like they're the best of friends. Because we all know, and you don't have to say anything about Saudi's role in 9/11, right? We don't have to say anything, or they're on the periphery at least. So I don't know how I feel about that. It's like mixed feelings, right? Because I live in New York. I remember the day the towers came down, right? Like, so it's very interesting. But at the same time, I do understand that you have enemies, and at some point you make peace and you make deals and you negotiate with your enemies at some point, right? So
yeah, you're right. Syria is extraordinarily complicated. I would say from the Syria perspective that it is trending now in the right direction. And, that's starting from a very deep hole.
Oh, yeah.
Right? It's been completely torn apart, at war, hundreds of thousands killed, fled, massive immigration issue for Europe. I think the book is still out on Ahmed al-Shara or Jalani, depending on your perspective. He seems to be able to impress people that he meets worldwide. Mm-hmm. Obviously, an intelligent person. He's saying the right things. He's doing a lot of the right things, and Syria needs that right now to go to the next phase. And the idea of sanctions removal, I do think, was fair, because they were imposed because of the Assad regime,
right?
It was dominated by Russia and Iran and brutalized the civilian population. So the Caesar sanctions, for example. So Syria cannot, and I think President Trump said this, they cannot advance with these sanctions on there.
Absolutely, I agree. Yeah.
So the Syrian people deserve that. Al-Shara, I would look at it more as a need for the Syrian people, right? Yeah. And then we gave them a list. The Trump administration gave them a list. I think the Biden administration did too, but of what they expected to see. And now we expect to see it. And part of that is leading as a leader for a comprehensive Syria, all of it. So that's a positive. And there needs to be elections, right? Ultimately, Syrians need to decide who's going to be the leader, not just the person with the strongest military faction. And maybe he'll do so good that they'll elect him, and then he's elected leader, and that's it, right? So that's certainly a possibility, but it's going to come down to his individual actions and keeping his word. Other positives, PKK, the U.S. designated Kurdish terrorist organization, is essentially disbanded. Right. So there's a lot of things trending in the right direction in Syria, again, starting from a very deep hole that I think the world should be happy with. Right.
Yeah, it's definitely better than Assad. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. A low standard.
For sure.
But,
yeah.
Yeah. A low standard. But that doesn't mean that, I mean, Syria could be a bustling, burgeoning place like it once was in the past, not so distant past. So I think it's a good thing. But I think, trust but verify is kind of thing when it comes to El-Shara, President El-Shara.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I mean, listen, honestly, I'm kind of okay if he keeps a lid on Syria and like he helps us with ISIS and doesn't fuck with the SDF that much, which I'm assuming will probably need a new name.
Yeah. The other issue, that's another issue of tension between the U.S. and Israel. Israel didn't want us to remove sanctions and didn't want the president to meet with.
Well, Israel is operating in Syria pretty heavily that we don't really talk about because there's just so much happening. Kind of gets swept under the rug a little bit because it's just, I mean, how many fronts can you fucking have, I guess, but Israel's trying to find out. So I would love to get into that too. I'm going to get Charles Lister on and see what the story is with like, why are they hitting, areas in Syria and stuff like that. They are having talks too, just, I guess secret talks, or there were secret talks between Israel and Al-Shara's government and stuff like that to try and figure it out. Al-Shara did say that he would be open to like joining the Abraham Accords and stuff like that and opening up stuff. So he's definitely saying the right things. And I think he needs to, because like he wants to be a statesman, right? He doesn't want to.
He knows how to play to his audience.
For sure.
In a negative way. He's talking to President Trump, who's one of the bigger accomplishments of his first term was Abraham Accords.
Right.
Right. So, and I think there is a possibility they could, but it's really going to take Saudi Arabia, I think, moving first.
Right.
And I don't think Saudi will move until there's permanent ceasefire in Gaza. And some movement on the Palestinian front, two-state solution. I know we're far from that.
Yeah.
But I do think certainly a ceasefire in Gaza is going to be required before Saudis really start talking about the Abraham Accords. But it can happen. It definitely can happen. And you gotta go in with that, which will, if this all happened, it would stabilize the Middle East. And that is a very good thing for the Middle East and for the world and for the United States.
I hope it does happen, man. Jesus. Anything else? Shout out. Yeah.
Yeah. I watched before we started the podcast. I was asking you about this restaurant that I saw a movie last night. Me and my wife did called, did I text it to you?
Nona's is the name of the movie, right?
Nona's
on Netflix.
Yes.
And the restaurant that it's based on is called Enoteca Maria.
Yeah. So the concept of the movie, and it's got Vin Vaughn, who's always awesome, but is a true story about a guy who started a restaurant, midlife, named it on his mother, and then used all grandmothers, which Nona's, I think, is Italian for grandmother, right? Kind of like
no, yeah.
Yeah. You guys call yours Yaya, right? Greek's
Bingo.
Yaya.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Nona's is Italian for grandmother. He just brought grandmothers in to cook. They're like,
that's cool.
Their favorite dishes, right? So it was all grandma's cooking, which is exactly the kind of food I'd like.
Which is hilarious. See, because I'm a cynical maniac. I just picture them like sweatshop labor, just have like these 80-year-old grandmothers in the back fucking making sauce, sweating.
No, I think it's a real small restaurant.
Yeah.
Obviously they're not going to pick that.
No, of course.
And, at the end of the movie, although I could probably live forever on Italian grandmothers cooking, but they also have other grandmas, right?
Yeah.
Probably Greeks and, Lebanese come in and
that's sick. That is cool.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I thought it was just Italian. No, that's cool. I
think it's primarily Italian.
Sure.
At the end of, when they do the credits at the end, they talk about,
oh, that is cool.
And other, I mean, that is, how could you not like that movie, right?
No, that's
anyway, so next time we go to New York, we're going to that restaurant.
All right, we'll go to, you're going to make me go to Staten Island.
That's right. I didn't know that was such a big deal.
It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. But in Brooklyn, we like to make fun of Staten Island. We like to make fun of all the other boroughs. because there's a reason it's called Kings County. So just everybody remember that. It's because we're number one.
Okay, got it.
That's what I tell everybody for
rivalries.
Yeah,
it's human nature to have a rivalry for every possible thing.
Every place, any kind of arbitrary thing, there's going to be a rivalry of some sort. Yeah. But I mean, everyone's coming together because the Knicks are playing well. Because I am from Brooklyn, but I'm not a Brooklyn Nets fan. They're from Jersey. Yeah, they're just visiting.
Oh, all right. So we'll be able to get you out of Brooklyn, and
absolutely. I'll cross that bridge. I'll pay the toll too. Toll's on me. Don't worry about it, guys. Don't forget, check out the movie. Check out the place if you're in Staten Island or in the area. It's that first one's tough. Enoteca Maria.
Enoteca Maria.
On Staten Island. Don't forget to check out Mick, Lobo, Fogbow, all the Mick's publications. The links will be in the description. You can check it out there. All the other guys, any and all information about the show and the guys, links are in the description. Do us a favor, like and subscribe. If you're listening to us even on audio, you could rate it 5 stars and subscribe there as well. It helps. Any kind of engagement helps. And the best way to support the show, patreon.com/teamhouse. You get both the Team House and Eyes on Geopolitics absolutely ad-free. You get early access to it, both video and audio. And you help support the show. So that's my house cleaning.
Not that we didn't sell it enough already, but Enoteca means, in Italian, means wine library.
Okay. Interesting. Maria. Fuck. All right. No, that's a tough name. That's a tough name, but I like it. Nona's is a better name. Let's be honest, but there's a lot of Nona's, like restaurants and pizzerias that are called Nona's.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'll shout out my family's restaurant in Brooklyn, Avli Greek Kitchen. All of our recipes are from grandmothers too.
We don't still got that?
Well, my family does. Yeah.
Oh, I'm going there too.
Yeah. It's on Smith Street in Brooklyn. Food. Yeah. It's legit. It's legit good. We don't make our grandmothers work like the Italians do, but we use their recipes. No, I'm just playing. Check out the place in Staten Island. I'm just fucking around.
All right, buddy.
All right, Mick. Appreciate it.
We got 2 places to visit.
Yeah, no, we're going to eat good.
Hey guys, it's Jack. I just want to talk to you for a moment about how you can support the show if you've been watching it, enjoying it, but you'd like to get a little bit more involved and help us continue to do this. You can check out our Patreon. It is patreon.com/theteamhouse. And for $5 a month, you can get access to all of these episodes of The Team House ad-free. The same goes with our affiliated podcast, Eyes On, with Andy Milburn, Jason Lyons, Mick Mulroy. That one, you will also get all of those episodes ad-free. And you support the channel and the show, and we really appreciate it. The Patreon members are literally what has helped this company, this small business survive, especially during our early years. And you are what continues to help this thing going, even as we navigate the turbulent world of YouTube advertising. So we really appreciate all of you guys. There's going to be a link down in the description to that Patreon page. And there is also going to be a link to our new merch shop. So if you guys want to go and get some Team House merchandise, we got stickers and we also have patches. And I should mention, if you sign up for Patreon at $10 a month, we will mail you this patch as well. So we really appreciate that. But they're also for sale on the merch shop. And additionally, they got t-shirts up there, water bottles, a tote bag, coffee mugs, all that good stuff. So please go and check them out and support the show. We really appreciate it, guys. Thank you.